Welcome back to another episode of Grit, Grace, and Growth. I'm your host, Laura Navaquin, and today we are diving into a topic that is both challenging and exciting, and that is career pivots. We've all faced moments in life where we've perhaps had to redefine our path, and sometimes that could feel overwhelming. But today I have someone who's navigated these shifts with grace and is here to share with you all her wisdom. Lauren Bercuson is a trademark and intellectual property attorney and the powerhouse behind Storylock Legal. With years of experience protecting the brands and features of entrepreneurs and innovators, Lauren knows firsthand what it's like to pivot and build a career on a brand new foundation. She's here today to help us explore what it takes to be successful in a career change and how to build a future that's legally sound no matter what direction you're going in. I know that we are counting down the days into holiday season, but our next guest is a great one to help prepare you for your goals moving forward into the new year. Welcome to this episode of Grit, Grace, and Growth, Lauren.
Thank you for having me, Laura. I'm so happy to be here. It's great to talk to you.
Likewise. I'm so excited to have you on today. I know that I've briefly heard some of your story, so I know part of that, but also just going onto your website and learning more about what it is that you do. I'm excited to jump right in. And I know that you had an incredible career as an attorney specializing in trademark and intellectual property. Can you share with us a little bit more about your personal journey and what led you to make your own career pivot into this space here?
Absolutely. So it's a long, crazy story, but to be as brief as I can, I started practicing in 2005 as a trademark and intellectual property attorney here in Miami, Florida, and I loved it. I did that for several years. I was trained at prominent boutique firm here in Miami. And after a while, I was a little bit nervous because I was a baby attorney. I was a little scared to pigeonhole myself. So I tried some other areas of the law. I did commercial litigation for a little bit. And then I clerked for an appellate court judge for about 5 years. And then I had my kids. And I have two beautiful boys. They're now almost 12 and 10. But my youngest son, when he was just 10 days old, actually suffered from a stroke. And as you can imagine, it changed the whole course of my life. His rehabilitation became kind of my North Star, just getting him to as good of a place as he possibly could be. So when that happened, after about a year and a half, I had an awakening, and I just said, I can't practice law right now. I'm not able to be my best lawyer because I'm so focused and worried about my son and want to be there to give him the best rehab possible. So interestingly, at the time, I've always been a huge reader and a huge writer. And I started blogging about children's books. We were reading so much. It was kind of like our way to unwind after the chaotic and crazy days. And everyone was asking me for book recommendations. So I ended up just starting a blog. And that blog led me to a position at the boys' elementary. Well, it was an early childhood school, which led into an elementary school. And they needed a children's librarian. My friends were all like, you've got to apply. And I was like, I'm a lawyer. Like, what are you talking about? I'm not a librarian. But it turned out that I applied and I got the job because I was so passionate about kids and children's books. So that was a major, major pivot to get out of the law and kind of pursue another passion of mine. And I did it for about 7 years. And once my son was really back in a good place where he was thriving, I kind of shifted gears. And then that's when I went back to law, started my own firm. And it was quite a journey, but I wouldn't change it for a bit. I was able to give my son everything he needed right on campus: physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech, everything. I was able to go as much as I could, integrated into the classroom. It was a total blessing for our family. And now I'm back to where I started. I work a lot with female founders, many of whom I met as I was blogging because these other women had started these killer businesses on their own, especially during the pandemic, and didn't know how to protect themselves. So it kind of all came full circle in a really organic, kind of scary way in the beginning.
Yes.
But I'm so happy where I am now.
Love your story. I'm glad to hear that your son is doing well and flourishing as well. And then I just love hearing your story as well, because so often I feel that we, or at least knowing my own story, that you have a certain plan and you think that this is your plan that you're going to work for your entire career or your life and whatever it is going to be that you're striving for. And sometimes life just has different plans for us. And taking that leap into exploring what's that plan that lies ahead of us. Now that you have your own practice and you have a career pivot, you are flourishing there as well yourself. And I know that career pivots often happen stepping into the unknown ultimately. What would you say was one of the biggest challenges you faced with your career transition, and how did you overcome it when you, so I know that you were working at the library and you started the blog and then you now have your own practice. What is a challenge do you feel that you've faced in that transition? Was it several? Was it one big one?
That's a really interesting question. When I first switched jobs, it was my own internal fear of judgment. I think that people were like, well, you were a lawyer, now you're a librarian. Like, why did you go to school for the law? If not, it was, I think I was very worried about that judgment and what people were saying. But then I just kept my son, kind of at the center of my focus and knew that I was really doing it for my family and to give him the best attempt at being, a wonderful human as possible. And then once I jumped from being the librarian right back to being a lawyer, I had major imposter syndrome. And I think that was one of my biggest challenges was like, I had to get out of my own way. I had to get out of the, okay, well, I haven't, been a practicing lawyer for several years. Am I going to be okay? Can I do it? And I really had to trust in myself, my education, my experience, and just remember that in some ways it is like riding a bike, right? Like I'm in such a niche area of the law that getting back into it was like a piece of cake because it's like, when you're an expert in your field, you know that area so deeply. So that didn't go away. So really, I think that was one of the big fears was just kind of my own self-doubt. And then of course, my other big fear was how am I going to grow a business and get clients? And luckily, I found a group called Entreprenista for female founders. And that single-handedly, that group, joining that group and meeting the incredible women in that group changed the course of my life and my career because I suddenly had a whole supportive network around me when I had to ask questions, about growth, about marketing, about finances, and through all of the people I met, my referral network just grew and grew. So it was, I would say those were my two biggest fears, but I, was able to overcome them.
It's so interesting that you share that part of your story because very similar to myself, I left the corporate world and what I was doing my entire career. And that pivot that I made was an entirely different industry. So I also similarly had that fear of what are people going to think with this career pivot that I'm making? Am I not going to be taken seriously? And then also just getting into a new industry. And it wasn't even necessarily that it was new because it was something that I had been doing on the side for 8 years nearly. So I had the experience, I had the knowledge, I had a network as far as where I was going in real estate, which was so different than group health insurance that I was doing for my entire career. But then I also faced imposter syndrome as well because I felt brand new. Am I going to be taken seriously? Am I going to be able to grow this? Thankfully, I have my husband who would continuously try to push me to get out of my own head as well. Right. But it's a challenge to work through and show up every day and building that confidence within yourself. And I love that you mentioned Entreprenista as well, because I am a member of Entreprenista. I believe that is where you and I initially met. And I have been a member of several other networking groups in my career, and some of them have been pretty prosperous and great in meeting women or entrepreneurs. But really, if it wasn't for Entreprenista, that really helped my business scale over the past year. So anyone looking for a great female networking opportunity, Entrepreneurs is great as well.
Exactly. Exactly. It's a phenomenal group, and it
Mhm.
is, again, like you, I'm also in several other communities, but there's just something really, really special about this group and the support and the true spirit of community over competition. So I can't
Mhm.
rate it enough. It was hands down the best investment in my business. So I'm,
Agree.
yes.
I have a number of other questions regarding Storylock Legal. So, how did you come upon your name, Storylock Legal? Is that going back to your experience with the books and the library opportunity a number of years ago?
So it's funny. I love that you asked that question because people don't actually ask me that a lot. Um,
Okay.
So, most law firms are, often somebody's name, right?
Uh-huh.
Lauren Bercuson, PA, or Bercuson and Associates, or, Lauren and Laura, PA, whatever it may be.
Yes.
And as a trademark lawyer, it was very important for me to have a brand so that I could talk my clients through the process and what it means to have a strong and distinctive trademark that's memorable.
Mhm.
Um, and one of the first examples that I like to give people is my blog, right? And my
Mhm.
blog is called Happily Ever Elephants, because that was how every time my son, my oldest, finished a book, instead of saying happily ever after, he would say, and they lived happily ever elephants, when he was a toddler. And when I started to blog and provide children's book reviews, I just used that name. Well, in a
Mhm.
world of I love kid books and kids books rock and the best kids books here, my blog title stood out. It was the one that everybody remembered. So
Mhm.
similarly, in a field of Bercuson Law or, Lauren and Laura lawyers, whatever it may be, I was like, I need a trademark that's going to stand out because that's what I do, right? I need to walk the walk. So the reason that I came up with my name is because obviously I love stories, and
Mhm.
stories are, the heart of my life. Like, I have been a huge reader my entire life, and it's still a very important point of every day. I'm always
Mhm.
reading. And I truly believe that every good, strong trademark also tells a story, because you
Mhm.
can hear one trademark, you can hear Lululemon, you can hear Huggies diapers, you can hear, Tom's shoes, whatever it may be. You can think of this whole universe and everything, everything about that brand, the quality, the price point, the type of consumer, their charitable endeavors. There's just so much that you can learn from one distinctive trademark. So, I always say that every trademark tells a story, and I help business owners lock in that story so that it's always exclusively theirs, so that
Mhm.
brand, that mark is theirs. We're going to lock in their legacies and let them grow so that, they might have other problems and other challenges that arise down the road, but their trademark will always be legally theirs. So that's where I got my name.
It's so unique because, again, as you mentioned, most law firms are someone's first and last name or the partners. So I love that unique aspect about it. And I know that you mentioned previously when you first started practicing law a number of years ago that you had practiced in a few different fields. How did you come about deciding to specialize in trademark and intellectual property?
So I like that question too. It's another good one. So I've always been a writer. I've always been, a reader, a little bit more creative. And my dad was an entertainment attorney, still
Mhm.
practices now here in Miami. And his was kind of like a sexy area of law, for lack of a better word. And everyone thought it was
Mhm.
like so glamorous. And I always thought it was fun because it was, you're dealing with entertainers and creatives, but I
Mhm.
knew that I didn't want to quite go that route. So I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do because a lot of the other areas just seemed so boring or so
Mhm.
heavy, that they just didn't feel right. And then from the second I took my first trademark class, I just fell in love. I love the whole naming aspect. I love helping people protect their creative works. Their unique inventions, their names, and it just immediately, like the second from the first day of that first class, I was like, this is what I'm going to do.
Going back to the name, Storylock Legal, I know, is built on the idea of securing the future for entrepreneurs and innovators, would you at all say that your experience in pivoting career paths or your career pivoting influences the way that you guide and support your clients?
Absolutely. So I think that I have a unique view and a
Mhm,
unique position because I see firsthand, like I've grown now my own business, right? I had a blog that became profitable.
mhm,
Had a virtual book club through that blog with children from around the world that would tune in once a month. And we had a book club. So I had that little business. And now I started my new trademark firm.
mhm,
And I think that I have a unique look at coming up with a distinctive brand and how to position yourself so that you truly are unique in your industry. And then I think I just have a very unique approach in that when I came back to being a lawyer, I was like, I don't want this big box, cold, stuffy law firm. Like, I met these amazing business owners who, legal is overwhelming for many people, intimidating, and a lot of people think of a lawyer and like it's like you start sweating, right? Like it just sounds really daunting. And I think because I worked so closely with so many small business owners for a while through my blog and these other areas, I realized the approach that I wanted to take that I feel is very different
mhm.
than a standard, kind of law firm that you would typically think about when you hear the word. So, I pride myself on personalization, warmth, transparency, making sure my clients don't feel like they can't, email me whenever they have a question because they think I'm going to, start running the clock and bill them for email. Not the way I practice. So, really, I did gain a lot of insight into the types of founders that I want to work with because I was with them and I saw firsthand their challenges and their fears.
Mhm. And I like that you mentioned that. So, with the clients that you seek out, do you specialize particularly within a certain industry or is it pretty open?
It's pretty open, actually.
Mhm,
I am industry agnostic because I always say every
mhm,
business should have a trademark, should get a registration for their name.
mhm,
I do love working with female founders. I don't work exclusively with female founders, but typically I would say that's maybe 75, 80% of my
okay.
clients. There's just something really special about women supporting women and helping
Yes.
other women that are really trying to build their businesses when so often, we in the past had been shut down. And that's the long
Mhm,
and short of it. So I love the empowerment. I love helping provide the education that these founders need. And I love just being able to work with women in a way that feels casual and us, and
mhm.
authentic to us moms, business owners, people that are trying to do it all. Like we all just get it. And I think that there's something really special about, helping female founders.
Agree. Yeah, it's very similar there. Can relate to that as well because what I do is not exclusive to women only, but I find such joy and fulfillment in collaborating, connecting with, and working with other female entrepreneurs as well. We understand each other and the challenges that we've been through and been able to help each other scale and rise together as well. So I love that.
Yeah, exactly what you said. There's a level of comfort and a level of understanding which can't be replicated. It's really special.
True. So true. I
Mhm.
want to go back to trademarking and your specialty there. As far as, so let's take away the legal aspect of it, but as far as your expertise and your recommendation for any entrepreneur that's starting, or even if they're not necessarily just starting out, but do not necessarily have a trademark yet, how important is it, or would you say that it is something that you do closer to the beginning of your entrepreneurship journey? Is it something that can sit on the back burner for a little while, or is it something that should be a high priority when getting started?
High priority when you're getting started. And I'm not just saying that because that's what I do. Uh,
Mhm,
but my first boss out of law school, I'll never forget. So this is almost 20 years ago. She
mhm,
said to us one day, the new associates, that building that you would never build a home on land that you don't own, that you haven't vetted, that you haven't cleared to make sure that it's safe, that you're in the right zones, all of that, right? You would never like bring on a builder without bringing, like vetting their background and knowing everything about them and the architect, whatever. You just wouldn't do it. It's way too risky. And
Mhm.
building a business on a name that you haven't cleared to make sure it's available and that you haven't properly protected is just as risky. So one of the
Mhm.
things that I saw a lot was that um, many people don't really clear their name, or they think that, oh, well, I have my LLC. My LLC is this name, or I have an Instagram handle, on
Mhm.
names. So the name is clear. That means nothing. Um,
Mhm.
having your social media handle, no one's monitoring those. So like someone could get Storylock Legals with an S, right? And
Mhm.
then say, oh, that's my mark because it was available. That
Mhm.
doesn't own a trademark. Similarly, registering your business entity simply means that you've registered your business entity, but it doesn't
Mhm.
mean that someone was like actively looking to make sure that you aren't infringing on somebody else's name. So
Mhm.
you always want to make sure that the name that you're using is clear, and a trademark attorney will help you go through all of the records of the US Patent and Trademark Office to look at existing registrations and applications to see if there's anything that's confusingly similar to
Mhm.
your name. And then it will also look at business directories, domain name databases, and information from across the country to make sure that no one is using your name and just hasn't taken action to register their marks yet. Because what would happen if you started a business with a name that you didn't clear is that you could be infringing on somebody else's mark. And, 2, 3, 4 years down the road, when someone recognizes you because your business is taking off, they can file a cease and desist letter, say that you're infringing on their trademark name, and then try to get your profits that you've made name. So that's obviously something you want to avoid. And then the other situation that people don't realize is that in the United States, trademark rights accrue based on whoever uses the mark first. So if someone goes to, let's say I've been operating under Storylock Legal and I never filed a trademark application, but I
Mhm.
started the name, a while ago. But then let's say you, Laura, are like, oh, I'm going to start a law firm and I'm going to use Storylock Legal. And you go to PTO and try to register Storylock Legal. Well, since I never took action to register my mark, the PTO has no idea about me. They don't know about me
Mhm.
because I'm not in their records. So
Mhm.
you will likely get the trademark registration. So that
Mhm.
means that now I, as the rightful owner, have to fight you to get a mark that technically I should own. And
Yeah.
that could be tens of thousands of dollars. So there are so many situations that you will avoid by just investing a small amount of money in the beginning to make sure that your name is clear and to make sure that you're protecting it so that you are going to be safe from these legal challenges down the road. You're going to face challenges, right? You're
Mhm.
always going to face challenges in business, but this doesn't need to be a challenge. This, you can, get protection right off the bat, and it's the best way to start. It's how you know you're building on a solid foundation.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point to make. And then with that in mind, my question to you is that with when you are trademarking your name, is it merely the name? Is it the logo that goes along with it? And if it is the whole thing, not just the name, but the whole look and picture and logo, how hard is that to change down the road if you want to alter your logo but still keep the same name? I would imagine you'd have to file something then, or are you locked into everything that you came out with from the get go?
Awesome question. And this is always one of the first things that I talk to my clients about. Um,
Mhm.
Especially if you're bootstrapped and you are, are just starting out. When
Mhm.
money is, on the lower end, right? I
Mhm.
always say we're going to take it step by step. The first thing you want to do is register your word mark only. So
Okay.
again, for me, that would be the name Storylock, right?
Mhm.
Not the logo, just the words, no stylization. The
Okay.
reason for that is because that gives you the broadest protection. It's going to protect you
Mhm.
however you design the mark, right? Let's say I filed an application for my logo, right? And then I get that registration. But then
Mhm.
let's say that that's the only registration I have is just for my logo. But then 2 years into that registration, I'm like, ugh, this logo is like not resonating, right? And you
Mhm.
see people rebrand and refresh their logos all the time. If you only had a registration for your logo and then you change that logo, you've just lost all your trademark protection.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's why I always say, let's do it piecemeal. First, we're going to register your word mark for your name. And then slowly we can add in your other pieces as your business grows and as your revenues grow and you have more
Mhm.
money to invest. Then we can file your logo once you know that it's working and you love it. Then we could file your
Mhm.
tagline. Then we could file your trade dress or your colors or whatever it may be.
Mhm.
All these smaller protectable elements for sure are things that you want to register, but you can do it piecemeal. You don't ever have to do it all at once. And that's how you also save money, but first
Mhm.
protect the heart of your business, which is your name.
Such valuable advice as well, because I think sometimes even for myself going back years that you think going to trademark everything is just so expensive and such an investment, but if more of us had the knowledge or just the information that we could piecemeal it together and cut that cost and split it over the year or the first couple of years of our existence as a business, that
Yeah,
we can protect ourselves to the best way while still being able to budget in the cost of doing so.
exactly.
So let me ask you a few more questions because this is just so informative. So is there somewhere that, before a client comes to you to work with you, perhaps they want to check out their name first or their idea? Is there somewhere that you would recommend that they go even check and see if the naming convention is even available before they have an initial consultation with yourself?
Yeah, and you could do a basic Google search. I mean, if you do a Google search and you search a few pages and you don't see anything under your name, that's definitely a good sign.
Hmm.
Certainly all you need to look at. Um,
Okay.
but you could also go to the USPTO website and you can do a free trademark search on there.
Mhm.
The
Okay.
challenge that many people who aren't experts in the field don't realize is that let's say there's a mark called Bluebird, and I always use this
Mhm.
example. Let's say I'm using Bluebird, and you want to use, and I'm using Bluebird the way it's typically spelled, right, with an
Mhm.
EBIRD. And then you come along and you're like, well, I'm going to change it up. I'm going to do BLUBYRD, right?
Mhm.
You might think that because you don't see anything on Google or because you don't see a direct match
Mhm.
on the PTO website that you're in the clear, but you're not because the PTO looks for things that sound the same too. So
Right.
if it's an I with a Y, you're replacing
Mhm.
those letters or an S with a Z, those will still be considered confusingly similar marks
Mhm.
and the PTO could flag you. So when you work with an attorney and you do a comprehensive trademark search, you're not just looking at the identical mark, you're looking at all kinds of things surrounding that mark.
Mhm.
There's also a doctrine of foreign equivalence. So let's
Okay.
say your mark is Ola, right?
Mhm.
And if there's a hello mark for the same goods and services, that also could be considered confusingly similar. So
Oh,
there's a
okay.
lot of things that go into the analysis that, people might not realize. Whether your mark is plural or not doesn't make a
Mhm.
difference. Whether your mark includes the word shop or not going to make a difference. So
Mhm.
a trademark attorney can help you navigate all of these little nuances.
So ultimately, any individuals or entrepreneur that's looking to trademark their brand, their name, their logo, they could do a Google search, but it's still best to seek out your services or a trademark attorney because there's so many other components to it that they could be missing altogether. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. There are definitely things that you can like DIY, but I do not think your trademark search in your application should be one of them.
Very good points. Very good point. And then with your services, so you're helping entrepreneurs file their trademark and research it. If there later on is another organization or company that files something similar and you need to file for a cease to exist, is that a service that you offer as well?
Mm-hmm.
It's
So I do offer monitoring services
mhm.
for once I file your application and your registration. we can be flagged if another application is filed that's confusingly similar, or if your application or registration is cited against
Mhm.
a later filed application. That way we can keep an eye on them. And of course, my clients, if they see something, out there in the marketplace, will immediately come to me, and then we'll plan, we'll plan our, our strategy and our plan of attack. But yeah, that's all stuff that I help with. And I also help with copyright registrations for all of your core materials, because that's really important. And then different types of contracts and stuff as well related to the IP world.
Well, so much great information there. And I definitely advise that anyone who's looking to start a business or already has an established business without a trademarked logo or name to go out and seek your services. I have one more question for yourself before we wrap up. Going back to our topic of conversation with career pivots and career changes, I know sometimes many listeners are contemplating a career change could feel hesitant or scared or fearful because of what other people may think or imposter syndrome, whatever it may be. Is there a piece of advice that you would be able to offer up to someone who's considering a big career shift in industries or even career shift within employment or even going out into entrepreneurship? Either way, it's a big career shift. Is there any piece of advice you would offer up to them?
Yeah, I would really just say trust yourself.
Mhm.
Um, we all get that feeling in our stomach, and trust it. Just trust it. I'm a very huge proponent, and I tell my kids all the time, do you have that yucky feeling in your stomach, or does
Yeah.
it feel really good?
Mhm.
And same applies for us, applies to us. I think that we often know we are our own best guides and our own
Mhm.
best judges, and we know internally what our answers are, but sometimes we're too scared to act on them for various reasons. And this is, life, relationships, friendships, business, whatever it may be. Trust your gut. It's never going to steer you wrong. Look, if you're making a huge business decision, you also got to get your data and get this and get that, but let your gut steer you. That's always my biggest piece of advice.
I love that. Such a great piece of advice. Trust your guts, trust your gut, and make that decision to move forward. And in closing, can you share with our listeners where they can find you?
Absolutely. So my website is Storylock Legal. It's spelled exactly like it sounds. Storylocklegal.com. I hang out mostly on LinkedIn, where you can find me under Lauren Bercuson. My last name is Bercuson. And then I'm also on Instagram under Storylock Legal.
Great. So I encourage everyone else to go out and follow Lauren and Storylock. All of their contact information will be included below in the story notes. So story notes. Now you have me speaking about a story in the show notes. So you'll have no trouble actually finding her online on the websites or on social media. So again, thank you, Lauren, so much for sharing your invaluable insights and experiences with us today. I know that your journey is such an inspiring one. I loved hearing your story and where it is that you have gone and are going. And remembering that a career pivot isn't just about changing jobs, it's about evolving into the next chapter of our lives. So
Yes.
trust your guts, take that step forward or that leap forward. And again, thank you so much for being on this episode, Lauren.
Thank you so much for having me. It was such a pleasure talking with you.
Likewise.